In today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast, I'm answering all of your questions for a special edition mailbag episode, with most of your guys' questions being centered around Jalen Duren. So we'll get into that as soon as we start in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Koo Cahill. You can find me over on Twitter at Koo Cahill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And also, I want to let you guys know to head over to LockedOnDaily.com, type in your email, and you'll get a Locked On Pistons daily newsletter along with your Locked On Pistons daily podcast, another form of content for you guys. I've had a lot of good feedback about it. If you haven't already, I think you will really enjoy it. Again, LockedOnDaily.com, type in your email, and you'll get a newsletter, Locked On Pistons newsletter with every podcast daily. So in today's episode, I'm answering all the questions that you guys sent in. I went on YouTube, posted in the community. If you want to be able to send in questions, go subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll be a part of the community. You'll be able to see all my posts and submit questions over there. Or you can also follow me on Twitter. I also took questions over there as well. A lot of questions. I'll try to get through as many as possible. But out of all, I'd say 70-ish questions that we got within 4 or 5 hours, I'd say at least half of them, maybe even more than half of them, are about Jalen Duren. And there's a bunch of different variations of the question, but I'm really just going to, instead of just picking one singular question, we're just going to summarize my overall thoughts on Jalen Duren and his future with the Detroit Pistons, because I think that's where that's what the majority of the questions are about. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Jalen Duren obviously is a very young player. He's a incredibly talented offensive player for his position, I would say. Supremely athletic, has a lot of things to like about him. But obviously I think people are aware of his weaknesses. And I think the main reason, obviously, this is being talked about is because, yet again, another stretch 5 matchup for the Detroit Pistons went terribly wrong because Jalen Duren struggles to guard stretch 5s. So that has led a lot of people to discussing, and I've seen it a lot in the Pistons community over the last week, discussing about whether Jalen Duren should remain. Should the Pistons be looking to move him? Should they be trying to upgrade at center position? Yada, yada, yada. So it's hard for me to pick where I want to start with, but I'm probably going to be a little all over the place with my thoughts here, so bear with me. I want to start with, positives, or just a description of what's going on with Duren. So this season with Jalen Duren, and you'll see where I'm going, we'll piece it all together. But this season with Jalen Duren, you are seeing them use him in a completely different type of way. So his rookie year didn't have much of a role. Didn't really have much of a role. His second year in the NBA, he had a very much increased role within the half-court offense. He had the ball in his hands a lot more. He was asked to do quite a bit of playmaking for the Detroit Pistons within the half-court. He was given a lot more freedom to try to go for his own shot from the high post area, to drive to the rim, to try to do his own thing. He was given a lot more usage in his second year. However, despite JB talking about wanting to use him within the half-court as a playmaker and all this, he's at a career low usage rate this year. Career low. He's at 13.8% usage rate. That's lower than his rookie season. So he's not really being utilized that much within the half-court offense outside of being a pick-and-roll threat, a play finisher in the pick-and-roll, and someone who just finishes offensive rebounds. That's really what he's being asked to do right now. He's averaging a career-low field goal attempts per game, 5.1 field goal attempts. However, within this role, he's been hyper-efficient. You tell Jalen Duren just to roll to the rim, finish lobs, finish dunks, finish dump-offs. You get an offensive rebound. If someone's open outside, make a kick out. If not, dunk on somebody. That's basically been what his role is within this offense to start this year. And again, he's been incredibly efficient doing this. He's shooting 75% from the field. His true shooting percentage is 71.9%. So, again, he's been incredibly efficient within this role. There's good and bad that comes with that, I would say. And I think this is what has caused a lot of the conversations about him moving forward. Also, I want to make it clear, Jaylen Duren, I think, has done some really good things this year, and I think he has shown improvement in a few areas this year. We'll get to that later. The team's 7-9 with him as their starting five. Could they be a little better? Yeah. Is it all his fault? Absolutely not. Everyone could be better in a numerous amount of games that they lost. It's not all his fault. Trying to put all of this on Jaylen Duren is crazy. I don't think everyone's putting everything on him, but I do think there's a lot of people putting majority of it on him. I don't really agree with that. So I want to get that out the way. But the good and bad that comes with this, the kind of role that the Pistons are really using him in, and JB kind of spoke to this after last game when he talked about how their defense is really about protecting the rim and being interior guys on the defensive end of the floor. So basically what they're trying to get, what the role that which they're playing Jaylen Duren in is of the role of a low usage big man who is just a rim runner, finisher around the rim, and a rim protector. That's really what it is. And that is the type of center you see a lot of across the NBA, like a Nicholas Claxton, a guy that the Pistons were rumored in being interested in. A guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, another guy that the Pistons were rumored in being interested in. I saw a few of you guys actually in your guys' question say, is he being compared to DeAndre Jordan? No, he's not comparable to DeAndre Jordan. They're completely different players. But the role that he's being asked to play this year is somewhat similar to what Clippers used to do with DeAndre Jordan. Just ask him to be a rim protector, roll to the rim, dunk everything. That's basically what's being asked of Jaylen Duren this year. So the good thing that comes from that is that he's going to be incredibly efficient doing this because he's such a good finisher around the rim, because he has such good hands on his lobs, because he's able to dunk just about everything, because he has good decision making. When he gets the offensive rebound, he's capable of kicking it out when he needs to if someone's open. He's able to thrive in that area. He's a good finisher, all that stuff. He's capable of thriving within that role. So you're going to see him be more efficient. The problem, or the potential problem with that, is that what makes Jaylen Duren a more interesting prospect is the other things that he can do within the offense, like be able to run multiple DHOs on the wing. And they do run a lot of DHOs with him still, but last year he had a lot more freedom of trying to take guys off the dribble from the high post, take guys off the dribble from the wing. I feel like they used him. I mean, the numbers support it, but he was just used within the half-court offense a lot more with the ball in his hands. And so far this year, this hasn't been the case. So eliminating that, you hope, would obviously lower the turnovers a little bit, but then also make him more efficient. However, if you're doing that, you're not getting the benefit of what he potentially could be. So that's the win-lose over there with the offensive end of the floor. And what goes along with this is the fact that despite his lowest usage rate, he has by far the highest turnover percentage he's ever had in his career at 21.4%. 21.4% turnover percentage. The previous high was last year at 16.7. That's nearly 5% difference. So despite the fact that he's had a lower usage rate, he's seeing turnovers in the amount of usage that he has go much higher. But he's much more efficient. Overall, let's move on to the next point. The other part of needing to be an incredible, providing an incredible impact while being in this role is you have to be an incredible defender. Guys who are, if you're not providing much shooting offensively, if you're not providing a lot of handling in the half court, if you're just going to be a rim runner, then you have to be impactful on the other end as well. And I think that's where people are starting to get, antsy about it. It's okay, if you're not going to use Jaylen Duren and give him more to do offensively and try to expand his role offensively, if you're going to try to put him into this role, okay, he's just not going to be good enough at one end of the floor to where that's going to be an incredibly impactful role for him. For example, if you compare this to Isaiah Stewart on the year, Isaiah Stewart's going to fit this brand of basketball a lot more because he's a much better defensive player. He's better when he doesn't have the ball in his hands as much. You don't want him trying to create too much for himself. And to be honest, this year, I'm going to go ahead and pull the numbers up for Isaiah Stewart this upcoming year, or for this season. He's been incredible in the pick and roll. Isaiah Stewart this year, he's in the 99th percentile. Again, it's an incredibly small sample size right now, but he's finishing around the rim at a better rate than he ever has in his career. He's finishing on pick and rolls a lot better than he ever has in his career. So he's fitting within that role a lot more, which is why the impact numbers, the on-off net rating, really flies in Stu's favor because Stu's going to thrive in that role a lot more. So that was what bring the question of, okay, well, should the Pistons move on and try to find someone else to provide that role? Should they go out and try to get someone who can be that lob threat but also be that incredible defender instead of trying to push Jalen Duren into this role? And where I end off with it is this. Jalen Duren is only 21 years old. He's only 21. The Pistons have decided to go into this year with both. Remember, in the offseason, there was questions about him and Ivy, and they went into this year believing in both of them. Ivy showing that it was a really good decision to do so, and I think Duren has showed improvement in multiple areas. He just has a clear weakness. It's just a clear weakness he has on the defensive end of the floor. Where I end up in this discussion is this. One, despite everything I said, the team's 7-9, and I feel like it's a little... I don't like having... I don't feel like it's right to be having this kind of discourse when the team's playing better than everyone expected them to be. I feel like it should be more positive, so I feel like we're kind of singling dudes out for no reason. We're not no reason, but singling them out when we don't have to, so that's one. Two, if you want to get big picture with it, I'd rather just stay in the moment. The team's playing well. I thought Jalen Duren's playing well. Again, he's had a clear weakness, but outside of that, I think he's done some good things. But if we're going to go big picture real quick, this is the question you have to ask yourselves. I'm not going to give you guys the answer to this. I want to hear your guys' answer to this. This is the question that you're basically asking. Should the Detroit Pistons give up on Jalen Duren at 21 years old? Do you believe this team actually could be that much better to where it's worth giving up on a 21-year-old to try to go and get a rim-running defensive, impact player at the 5 position with this crew of guys? Would that make a big enough difference and provide enough of a difference for the next 2 to 3 years to where it'd be worth giving up on a 21-year-old Jalen Duren? Is that something that you think it outweighs the negative there? That's up to you guys. But that's the question you really need to be asking. Also, what comes up in this as well, and I understand this completely, why some of you guys are bringing this up in the community. They do have to make a financial commitment to him and Ivy soon. And whether you can pay both and whether you should feel comfortable paying both the type of money they could command is a fair question. I just think it's maybe a little too early in the season to be trying to force this conversation. I think you need to give Jalen Duren a little bit longer than 14 games played. And within the 14 games played, I think he's shown improvements in a lot of areas. I think he has a clear weakness guarding stretch bigs, clear weakness guarding bigs on the perimeter, but I think he's gotten better as interior defender. And for the role that they're asking him to do within the offense, he's doing it really well offensively. He's doing great in his limited role. He's finishing really well. I feel like this conversation should be pushed back just a month. Let's give it one more month, and then we can have this discussion. But I feel like it's kind of unfair to Duren, and it's kind of unfair to the Pistons and their team, the players, for how well they're playing compared to what people expected, for us to already be talking about, hey, you got to give up on this dude. You got to move on from this dude. We can't take it. I just feel like it's a little early to be doing that. But I hope I broke down the whole situation and where we're at and why this is a discussion and, where they can move forward. I don't have an answer. I don't really want to provide an answer right now because, again, like I said, it's early in the year and they're playing better than we expected. I don't feel like it's really fair to focus on this. But I wanted to give the argument, present the both sides. And I want to hear from you guys now. After hearing all that and understanding how I broke it down, where do you guys stand on this? Where do you guys stand on the discussion that's going on around Jalen Duren? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @KookHill. When we come back, I'm going to answer more of you guys' questions, such as, is Tobias Harris's play a little concerning for the Detroit Pistons? Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, I've told you guys this many times. I've been using FanDuel for a few years now, and I really love using it. It's super easy to use, super self-explanatory, but obviously, most importantly, it's super fun to use. So head over to FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so now I'll try to get more into specific questions here from you guys. Because, again, the Jalen Duren question, I got it from probably like 40 of you guys in just different ways of asking it. So I just summed it all up into one segment, so you guys all felt like I answered your question. But now we'll try to go more individually and answer direct questions that were sent to me. This one is, this is probably the last one we'll do. That is more of a generalized question, because I did get a lot of you guys answering this, and then we'll move into specific questions from you guys. But this one's about Tobias. A lot of you guys asked, can the Pistons continue to thrive with Tobias, or continue to play the way that they are playing if Tobias Harris is not going to get much better? So to answer that question, obviously we need to break down how is Tobias Harris currently playing for the Detroit Pistons. Tobias is not having the greatest of years. He's just not. He's not playing as well as I expected him to play for the Detroit Pistons offensively this year. Now, I will say, as the games have gone, and as he starts to get more in the groove, he's gotten better and gotten better and gotten better and gotten better. But he's still not at where you'd like him to be. On the season, he's averaging 13 points a game, 44% from the field, 28% from deep. Again, this is a guy over his last 5 years in the NBA. This is a guy who shot 48% from the field, around 37% from deep, averaging around 17.5 points a game over the last 5 years. So this is way below his standards. Way below his standards how he's playing with the Detroit Pistons this year. So far, to start the year. This doesn't mean he's going to stay like this. Doesn't mean he's not going to get better. He's already starting to, I feel like, round into, he's starting to get better as the games go on, basically is what I'm saying. He started off the year just not being able to hit a three, and he's had a few games lately when he's able to hit 2 threes. He had a game against Atlanta when he hit 5 threes. But even still, including that game, let's go ahead and go back to the Atlanta game. The game since then, you have games of 1 of 2 from deep, 2 of 4 from deep, 2 of 5 from deep, which is fine. But then the last 3 games, you got 1 of 4, 1 of 3, 1 of 4. So basically, I don't think Tobias is playing up to his standard. If you look at his synergy chart, spot ups, he's in the 31st percentile, below average. In transition, he's 30th percentile, below average. Post up, 32nd percentile, that's average. Pick and roll ball handler, 35th percentile, that's average. Isolation, 30th percentile, below average. He just has not been the player that he has been over the last few years, really over his entire career in the NBA. You just look at what he did last year, played much better. You're talking about a guy who was in the 80th percentile last year in spot up. That was in the 70th percentile in transition. That was in the 71st percentile in post ups. 60th percentile in isolation. This is a guy who's been a really good offensive player his whole career, and he's just struggling right now. So can the Pistons, despite the fact that he's playing like this, continue to thrive? No, they are going to need Tobias to pick it up. They're going to need Tobias to get back to what he's been for the last 6-7 years of his career. They're going to need him to get to that. If he can't get to that, it's going to be a struggle for them to consistently provide offense. They're one of the reasons why the Detroit Pistons have a good defense right now, but their offense in an offensive roster that they created is still struggling, is because the guy that they brought in and paid the most money to in Tobias, that they expected to be like their second or third option, hasn't been able to do that. Really, it's been on a lot of nights, been Malik Beasley coming off the bench, being their third option, getting up 15 shots and scoring 21 points on 5 made threes. Like, that's what he's been doing off the bench. It hasn't even been Tobias Harris, which is what a lot of people expected him to be. I will say this, though. Tobias Harris is providing something that can't be valued in stat sheets, and it's his leadership and culture. You talk to any of the players, you talk to anyone who's around any of the players, you talk to anybody around the situation, everyone I've spoken to and talked with, everyone has said that Tobias is helping change the culture. He is one of the most important personalities in the locker room. The guys look up to him. They like him. He leads them. Like, he's providing a lot of that stuff in the locker room that's resulting in a changed year for the Detroit Pistons so far this year. The 7-9 record, he's had some fine games, but more importantly, his presence on the floor as a leader and in the locker room is really being felt by everyone around the situation. I understand that may sound cliche, it may sound corny, but it's the truth. And I think after what you witnessed last year with the Pistons, you understand, or at least you should understand, how important that is. So I wanted to shout that out, and I do think he's given a lot more effort defensively this year. He's averaging the most rebounds per game since 2019 of his career. So he's more active on the glass. He's more active defensively, which is one of the bigger reasons why the Pistons are towards the top of the league or in the top half of the league defensively, because they're getting the most out of guys that weren't necessarily defenders this year so far through 16 games for them. And Tobias is one of them. So he's doing some good things. He's providing some good value things, but the thing they need him to provide the most, he hasn't been able to provide them. And if they want to continue to have a good season, if they want to get above 500, if they want to push for the play-in, if they want to make the play-in, they are eventually going to need Tobias to not shoot 28% from deep. They're going to eventually need Tobias to become a better finisher and be the better finisher that he's been throughout his career. They're going to eventually need him to do that. They're going to need him to be able to abuse mismatches in the post like he has been throughout his career. They're going to need all that stuff, his versatility as an offensive scorer. They're going to need that out of him if they want to get there. They're not getting it right now on a consistent basis, and it is very much hurting them. Once he turns around and starts clicking, along with how Malik Beasley's been playing and how THJ outside this last game has played all year, along with how Ivy and Cade have improved, their offense is going to start clicking on all levels, along with their defense. This is going to be a pretty respectable team, I'll say, if that can happen. But it hasn't happened yet. They've gotten good nights from THJ and Malik. They've gotten good nights from Malik and not THJ. They've gotten good nights from THJ and not Malik. But they haven't been able to get a night where it's Malik, THJ, and Tobias all playing well with Cade and Ivy. Once those nights start to happen, they will be a much better team, and they will be fighting to be above 500 consistently throughout the year. But it hasn't happened yet, and they need it to. So to answer all of your guys' questions about Tobias Harris, they absolutely need him to be better. He has not been good enough. They need him to be. He can be good enough. We're holding him to his standard. Not an all-star standard. We're holding him to Tobias Harris' standard since 2017. This has been the player he's been for 6 years, literally. 6 years. He's been the same player. Just be that player and they'll be fine. He hasn't been that yet, but I think he will get to there. I think he's looked better as the season went on, and it's going to be hard for me to believe that he's just not there anymore. I don't believe that's the case. I'm not going to buy that. So that's my thoughts on Tobias Harris. All right, now into some more specific questions. This one's from Matt on Twitter. He says, if Asar Thompson comes back, how in your opinion does that change the starting lineup in the rotation? So Asar is coming back. It's not if. He is coming back. He's been cleared. He's just getting his conditioning up. I do not think initially it will change the starting lineup. I do think it could down the line, but initially when he first gets back, I do not expect him to go into the starting lineup, and I expect him to take some of the minutes from Simone Fontecchio, who has really struggled. I expect him to take a lot, if not all of Ron Holland's minutes, and I think that's probably where he'll be at. And I'll probably have him around, 25-ish plus minutes off the bench when he first gets back. I think that's probably where he'll be around. And then once he gets back into the groove of things, I do think he'll probably have a chance to start, and most likely will be closing almost every game because of what he provides defensively. And I'm really excited to see what he improved on offensively, because you guys know how big I am on his potential ceiling as a secondary playmaker. So that's my answer to that question. Next question is from Brendan Crew on Twitter. Says, if the Pistons maintain a near 500 record by the deadline, who do you feel will be the most valuable from our side? By far, I think it will be the guys like Malik Beasley and THJ. I don't know. I feel like Malik Beasley and specific. Actually, no. Let's just say Malik. I think Malik will be the most valuable because he's going to be a guy that doesn't cost as much, is on an expiring contract, and can instantly go help a contender, and they know that what they're getting from him. So I think he will be the most viable asset at the deadline. However, I really think he provides more value to the Pistons, and this is one of those years I feel like that the Pistons, instead of being at the deadline, I won't be sitting here this year at the deadline saying, sell, get your assets, and recoup them, get more players in the offseason. I don't think that's going to be this year. That's how I've been the last 4 years, but I think this year's going to be different with how they're playing. I don't think I'm going to recommend them to do that, but I think most valuable will probably be someone like Malik for a contender who's willing to give up maybe a pick or two, or not or two, but give up like a few second-round picks maybe for Malik B. I think that would be the most valuable asset if he continues to play like this, but I don't think they should be selling on him at the deadline. I don't think the Pistons should be sellers at the deadline this year. But we'll get into more questions when we come back. One of the questions, a few questions I got was, should this player stay or go? And we kind of hit on it just now, but we'll go through each player that I've been asked about if the Pistons should be looking to potentially trade them at the deadline or keep them moving forward. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to you all. To just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Just join over 10 million users and sign up today. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. PrizePicks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and safe withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win that $5 to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your specific lineups. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so I'm going to get into I want to try to do some quick hitters so I can get to everyone's question, and then we'll eventually get into the whole who should stay, who should go. So these ones are from YouTube. This one is from King in Training. What does a realistic trade package for Giannis look like? Obviously no Cade, ideally not Ivy. The Pistons don't have a realistic trade for Giannis. If Giannis becomes available, they don't have an offer. Their only offer would be like Cade, Ivy, and Duren. Like that's their offer. They don't have any offer for Giannis if he were to become available. It's just not going to happen. They don't got the picks, which is what I think Milwaukee would obviously probably end up wanting if they moved off of Giannis and Dame so they could rebuild moving forward, and the Pistons don't got that either. My goodness. So they don't have a package for Giannis. This one's from Nuggies6193. Is it better to fill our missing pieces through this year's draft or through trades? I think trades will be the best way to do it eventually. Whether it's at the deadline or the offseason, I think trades will be their most. I think trades will be the best option to get the players you need. Especially, I don't think the Pistons will be picking in the top 5 this year. So, definitely trades. This one's from DPJA on YouTube. Should Jaden Ivey be in consideration for most improved player of the year? He should 100% be in the consideration for it. He's playing really well. He needs to be consistent to be in that, obviously consistent throughout the year, to be in that discussion. However, if I'm being objective, there's one player I think that's running away with it right now, and it's Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels has been he's made the biggest jump out of anybody, and he's looking like prime Tony Allen, prime Gary Payton out there. Like he's been exceptional for the Hawks. So I think Dyson Daniels is at the front of the lead right now. That's just being objective. But should Jaden Ivey be in the conversation? 100%. This question is from Johnny Boy on YouTube. Would you trade Jaylen Duren? Not right now. I don't think the Pistons should be making any any deals or thinking about making any deals, obviously, until after December 15th, where most free agents can be traded. But even after that, I would be waiting until maybe January before you start making decisions on, okay, who should we keep, who should we move going forward. But we're not there yet. 16 games is way too early. And again, JD has some struggles. He still has his struggles, but he also does good things as well. So I wouldn't trade Jalen Duren right now. This one's from Mr. Akai on YouTube. Is Tobias' contract tradable? I know that's your guy, but he needs to go. I will sell for him even coming off the bench. Yes, Tobias Harris' contract is tradable because of how the length of the contract is. It's a lot within a short span, but it's a very short contract. In the offseason, it will be considered an expiring contract. Next year, it will be an expiring contract. So I do think it's tradable. I expect if the Pistons were to have traded Tobias, which I would not trade him right now. Again, his culture, what he's bringing to the locker room is really important. Excuse me. But in the scenario in which Tobias were to be traded in the future, in that scenario, he's probably just being used, I would say, as salary filler. Like, he wouldn't be the main piece of that trade. If Tobias ends up being traded by the Detroit Pistons at some point during his contract, it's because they packaged him with a young player and they went after a guy on a larger contract. That's why I believe is if they were to trade him, that's what it's going to look like. Because right now they don't have like that cap flexibility right now, just already there like they had last year. If they wanted to go get someone who's making fill-in player X that's making $30+ million a year, they can't just absorb that guy. So they would use Tobias' contract, I would say, I think it's the most likely scenario. They would probably use Tobias' contract to match the salary, and then one of their young players be the actual asset in that deal. So, yes, I do think his contract's tradable because of the length, to get to your question. So, but that's all the questions I got on YouTube. Back to the Twitter section, where we got about 30 plus of them. Again, you guys can follow me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill, or you guys can obviously subscribe at the YouTube channel, and you'll be able to comment in the community and ask whatever question you want. You'll get answers from me, and obviously you'll be able to talk with other community members as well. So go check that out. This is a question from Dops. Do you think Tobias stays around this level for the rest of the year? If he does, do you think they can improve? This is like what we just talked about last segment. No, I don't think they can improve their offense with him like this, and he needs to get better. I don't expect him to stay like this. This one's from Brandon Engel. He said, would you like to hear your thoughts on targets for the center position? Maybe do one very gettable guy, one somewhat realistic, and one dream target. I don't want to go through all of those right now because, again, like I said in the first segment, I feel like it's somewhat just a little bit premature and unfair to how well the team's playing right now compared to expectations. But I will give you one guy that I think would be a perfect trade. If the Pistons did want to go that route, one guy I really would like is a guy they just went against and had killed them, of Jakob Poeltl. If they could get him, that would be fantastic for them. Defensive, rim-running center, a smart player, sets good screens. That would be perfect if they want to go that route. I'm not saying they have to, but that's one of the guys I immediately think of that I think would be great for them. All right, this is the last question I'll answer, and then we'll get to – actually, I have two questions I want to answer at this. Then we'll get into who stays, who goes. This one is, how do you basically the question is, how should the Pistons be able to guard stretch fives? And there's multiple ways to do it. We went over it on the last podcast. You can play drop coverage, but your big has to recover and close out really well. Like, he has to be able to close out strong, aggressively, and also be able to move his feet to stop the opposing five from attacking off the dribble. That's something that they've struggled to do with Jalen Duren so far. They've been able to do it somewhat with Stu, but they've struggled with Duren. The other thing is, you could also just switch across the board. Switching across the board makes it incredibly hard for you to get open threes. You often have to ISO against it, which is what the Boston Celtics love to do. They like to get you in isolation in the middle of the floor. They're switching across the board, and then they have help principles. So that's what the Celtics love to do. However, they're able to do that because they have switchable guys at every single position. The problem with that is that Jalen Duren is not necessarily the best, switching defender. And then also the Pistons have smaller players on the floor right now. So when you switch a Beasley or an Ivy onto a big, then you run into a mismatch on that end. So that's a problem. I talked about how they had the opposing or the weak side defenders rotate over and the drop big sprint to the corner. You can do that, but then also your rotations have to be crisp, and your center has to be into that corner and again has to be able to move his feet on a player attacking a closeout. So there's multiple ways you do it. It just requires, one, you have to have some individual defensive talent, and I think that's where the Pistons really get exposed. And two, their rotations have to be crisp. And they haven't been as crisp when they go against 5-out offenses because there's so much ground to guard. Whereas if there's someone in the dunker spot rolling to the rim, you can kind of help down and not worry about it as much. But that's my answer to that. The next question, this is my favorite question maybe I've ever been asked. This one's from Keon. His first question is, who are people, newsletters, podcasts, shows you read, watch, listen that make you learn more about the game or how the league works, like analytics, trends, and front office, etc.? So for me, what I did, I listened, obviously, I watched a lot of JJ Redick's podcast when it was around. I listened to Nikias and Steve's podcast, The Dunker Spot. But also, if you want to be honest, I looked up a bunch of YouTube videos after I graduated high school. I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos from a bunch of well-respected channels like Ben Taylor of Thinking Basketball, and just multiple channels that only focused on breaking down the game and breaking down statistics, breaking down analytics, and how they're created and what the impact is, what they're trying to prove, what is it, what's their toolkit for. Like, that's what I did. So And also, there's just really good follows on Twitter that I follow that do a good job of breaking it down over the years that I've just learned from and applied it to myself. That would be my suggestion for anyone trying to learn it. And then the second question that you had was, what was the last thing you changed your mind on, if anything, about the NBA and why? And I would say the last thing that I felt pretty strongly about, in the NBA that I don't feel as strongly about now is I felt like that for a few years, I felt like you needed to have a top 3 player in the NBA in order to win a championship, to get to the finals. I feel like the time of like the 04 Pistons is done, and you need to have a top 3 player to get to the finals. I no longer feel that way. I feel like you can make a really good team and just play the right way with how much parity there is in the NBA and how much more talent there is in the NBA. I don't think you need that as much anymore. And I think a team like, I'm not going to say that team because it's going to come off as a diss. So I'm going to leave it to you guys' imagination who I'm thinking of, because if I say it out loud, that fan base is going to come after me. But yeah, that's my answer to those 2 questions. All right, real quickly, this podcast is going a lot longer than I wanted it to go, but it's good content. Stay or go? I was asked this question: which of the veterans should stay or go? My quick answer to all of that is Tobias should stay, Malik should stay, THJ maybe could be moved. I'd like Tobias and Malik to stay. THJ playing well, he brings good things, but there's potentially another player on the team that they'd like to take over some of his minutes, and 2, he's a little bit more inconsistent. So if they want to move him to a contender at the deadline, I'd understand that, but preferably, honestly, if they're playing well, I'd like to just keep all of them, to be honest. I don't think they should be trying to move them. If there is one that I think they could move, is THJ, to create room maybe for Clintman, or more minutes for Asar, or potentially more minutes for Marcus Sasser. So I could see that, but outside of that, I don't think the Pistons should be in the business of trying to sell their guys, unless they're trying to go after an actual player. If it's just selling them for assets, I don't think they should be doing that right now. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Longer podcast today. I apologize for that. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Till next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Till next time, peace out.